So, and again, I have to stress just again the very end of the first chapter, just that one concept. I think it's kedai for us every week to remind ourselves, and really every day for a Jew to remind himself that what we do down here unlocks what happens in the spiritual world. Which what that means is that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that there's just the spiritual reality up in the spiritual worlds, and then there's a physical reality in this world, and we're affecting something over there, but we don't really know about that. We don't benefit from that. We don't have any notion of that. What it means, I was once in a water park for kids. They have these water parks, and I don't remember exactly how it worked, but I think it was something like this. There was this huge barrel up on a pole, and then there was this line with buckets, and the line was always going up. It was bucket, 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 and the kids had to fill up from another thing in the bucket, and then it goes up there, and then it pours the bucket into the big barrel, and then it comes back down, and then they pour and then once it gets big enough, once it gets filled enough, so then it turns over and spills out onto the kids, and that's the fun, right? So that is really the mashal. That's really the metaphor here. What you do down here, if you smile at somebody, if you're kind to somebody, if you're compassionate, they might accept it or they might reject it, right? But something good happened. You just brought something into the world, right? So too, if you do a mitzvah, any positive thing you do in this world, right? You're filling up one of those buckets, and it goes up there, right? One of these days, the barrel's going to overturn, and you're going to be able to receive. You're going to be the recipient of all that goodness that you're bringing into the world. Besides just the psychological reality, of course, that if I'm kind, so then I create an atmosphere of kindness, right? And like Shlomo Melech, I think we spoke about this last time. Shlomo Melech said that Kamayim panim panim ken lev adam al adam. Just like when a person looks in the water and they see the reflection, so too the hearts of man. We spoke about this a few times, right? The electromagnetic fields of our hearts, right? That you bring out in a person what you are pouring onto them, right? So all of that is so important for us to realize, but even more greatly on the spiritual level, because down here this is like the last stop, right? The train starts way up by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it has many different stops in the spiritual worlds, and you only know who's on the train and what's coming, so to speak, once they get out at the last stop, and that's in our life. But we're the ones that are creating what's up there. And like we learned last time in Nefesh HaChaim from Rabbi Chaim Volozhin, that Hashem placed all those keys in our hands. We're in charge of it, right? All the angels, all the spiritual forces, it all is dependent upon us, right? Which is not to be pressure, it's supposed to empower us, right? Okay, so you'll forgive me if each week I go over that point, because it's just so important to remind ourselves over and over and over to drill it in, right? So we were talking last week in Perek Sheni about other aspects of the midah of keter, of compassion, of love and compassion, and how we can emulate it and how we can express it in our lives. Besides those 13 attributes of loving kindness that we learned about before, which are in our interpersonal relationships and in given situations, how a person acts towards me and how I respond towards them, right? Or when I see a person that's in a particular state, right? When I have to pull out those midot of compassion, right? In difficult situations, in difficult interpersonal situations. And now, in this paper, we're talking more about how a person should conduct himself, even physically, right? Spiritually and physically together. So last week we spoke about anava, humility. How keter has this ultimate level of humility, that it's the first part of the creation of the tin sefirot, and it has space, so to speak, to say like, well, I'm bigger than everybody else, but he only looks down. The stance, the how do you say, the imda, the orientation of keter is just to be looking down to see how can I spread goodness, how can I bestow goodness, right? And not looking up at the source of it, where it's receiving, right? And we said that is very much dependent on the head, right? We're gonna start today going into all the different parts of our head, right? Which we can be fast. I think it's gonna be fascinating for you guys. But in general, how a person holds his head, right? Person holds his head up, head down. We spoke about the Ramban Hakadosh in his famous letter. Says your head should be down, you should be looking down, right? Which we said maybe in our generation means a little bit more figuratively than literally, that we should be looking at those that are less fortunate than us, whether it's physically, whether it's spiritually, emotionally. How can I bring goodness to this person, right? And how a person carries their head in general. That also, just read the last line here. A person has to set himself up in life in a way that my function in this world is to bring good to other people, to bring good to the world. And there's no creation in this world that's not ra'ui, ra'ui.
Desire?
No, not desire. Fit, befitting. What do you say? Magielo. My head sometimes the translations. I once spent 3 months in America. I was taking care of my father-in-law. He was sick, and I came back. After I came back, it was such a pleasure to give class, because just being in America for 3 months, my English got so much better. Remember, just talking in English, but that's not befitting. That's not worthy. That's the word I'm looking for. Not worthy of receiving my goodness, right? Just like Hashem, even those animals. Remember, we had funny moments last week. We were talking about how different animals that are not the most pleasant-looking animals, right? Or worms, right? Kodesh Baruch Hu says, none of this is below my dignity to give good to you and to make sure that you're taken care of. So to us, everybody, right? Even ants, even bugs, all of them. We should be thinking how we could be doing good. You guys probably have heard the famous story of Rav Kook when he was walking with Rabbi Levine. And one of the first stories that usually people hear about Rav Kook is that one time they were walking, and they were deep in discussion, and Rabbi Levine picked a leaf off of a bush or a tree or something, and he started, just kind of like crumbling in his hand or whatever, without thinking about it. Many people do that, and all of a sudden he looks at Rav Kook, and Rav Kook is looking at him with this look of shock. He said, "How could you do that?" I said, "What did I do?" Right? And nobody would accuse Rabbi Levine of not being the most sensitive, sweet human being on earth, right? Rav Kook said, "You just pulled that leaf off of the tree for no reason." Meaning, if you need the leaf because you have to eat or whatever, okay, but just stomp to do that, to like destroy it. It's a level of sensitivity that even Rabbi Levine couldn't even imagine. What, I can't pull off leaves if there's no purpose for it? So no, you shouldn't harm anything in this world, right? We have to be careful where we take that. We don't want to take that. If we do have a need to benefit from something, so then we do. Hashem created this world for us to benefit from it also, right? But not stop to be destructive. So he said, "V'zo midah tluya b'keter b'sod harosh derech klal." And this is dependent on the head, right? Meaning how the head, figuratively, right, more than literally, I think, but also literally, like if our head is in a position, like we said, if a person is a humble person, you can see it in all of their body language. So too, the way they carry their head, right, the way they look at you, not just with their eyes, but their head, right? There's some people that when you're talking to them, they're so compassionate, you feel their whole body is being compassionate towards you, right? Just the way they're listening to you, right? It's a good homework exercise for you guys to try to notice when you're listening to someone who's sharing something with you, difficult or whatever, how your body is showing, how you feel in your body, and how do you notice your body, how you're expressing compassion, right? I have a friend who went to go meet with a Rabbi here in Yerushalayim, Rabbi Hyman Morgenstern, and he said, I was talking to the Rabbi and I just started crying. And I said, "Why'd you cry?" He said, "Because I felt he just loved me so much. I just felt it, and it was just overwhelming. I've never felt that kind of love from a person before." Right? So, halavai, we should be on that level. We should aspire at least to that level, right? That we can change people's lives and give so much to them, right? Okay, now we're going to go weiter. Hashniya, the second aspect of the head, which is how we express Hashem's midah of keter. You want to add something?
Because you mix the languages, we are going weiter.
Weiter.
Yiddish, I love it.
Right. You guys should get this. You guys get a lot of Hebrew. You also need a little bit of the mama lashon here. Okay. Hashniya machshavto. The second part of your head that you use for keter is your thoughts, right? The machshavot, right? The truth is that there's two different kinds of machshavot. I don't want to go into this too deeply right now because also it would take a long time, and I don't know that I fully grasp all of it to its depth. But there's a machshava in your heart, in your mind, in your brain. Of course, in modern world, we think that this is the only place that we think thoughts, right? But according to the Torah, that also the main place that we actually think thoughts is in our heart. There's something called machshavot alev, the thoughts of the heart, right? That you guys know what Shlomo HaMelech davened for when Shlomo HaMelech when he became king at age, who knows what age Shlomo HaMelech became king? King Solomon, the great wise King Solomon, 1 year before his bar mitzvah. 12 years old, he became king, and he had a prophecy, and Hashem asked him, "What do you want?" And he said, "Lev shomea, a listening heart, right? A heart that can listen. Heart has ears, yeah. You have thoughts in your heart hears, your heart feels, your heart picks up, just like we're talking about the electromagnetic field, and that's just one tiny discovery of science, which is cool and interesting and beautiful for something that we already know in our Torah. But in any event, there are a kind of machshava in your mind, as we all know. So how do you make your machshavot into the midah of keter, of loving kindness and compassion? He says that it should tidmeh lemachshavat keter, that you should make your thoughts similar to the thought of the midah of keter. How does the midah of keter think? That exalted wisdom in the way of thinking of the midah of keter never stops thinking good thoughts, right? In our generation, it would be considered, if there would be a person that would like totally emulate keter, people would think they were crazy, right? Remember we talked about last week about Rav Fishel Strickover, that he wouldn't believe you if you told him that a Jew did a sin. He just didn't believe it, right? Today, you said, person, you got to go get checked out. But it's a reality. Guys do sins all the time. Like, right? No, he's so connected to the. By the way, his yard site was this week. The thought of keter is just this perpetual one-way river of flowing goodness. V'hara lo yikanes ba. Bad has no ability to enter into the thoughts of keter. Because I'm so right. It's kind of like you guys know the concept of shmirat einayim, to guarding our eyes, right? So if you're going to go walk into town, you're going to have a challenge in guarding your eyes, right? So what's the trick? How do I stay strong and guard my eyes? I put one guard on my left eye, one guard on my right eye, with big strong muscles. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to look. This, right? And my face looks like this when I'm walking the street, and everybody thinks like, what's wrong? Why is he so upset? I just want to stay focused. Right? So eventually you're going to lose and I'll tell you why. Because you get tired after a while. To be on guard all the time is exhausting. It's not a viable strategy for long-term success. So then how are you supposed to have shmirat einayim then? So the Piasatz Rebbe says, before you go out, fill your mind with something, with goodness. Fill your mind with thoughts of Torah, thoughts of kindness, thoughts of whatever it is that you're trying to do, thoughts of midot, thoughts of Hashem. Fill yourself up. Now you go on the street, you don't even have to do shmirah. I'm flowing right now with goodness. I'm too full to let anything else come in right now. I don't want that, right? It's like a person can also, with all kinds of things with shmirah, right? You guys get to understand the concept. That's what it's saying here. Is keter is so filled with compassion. It's all, my whole function in this world is just flowing. Not like us human beings, how we give and we take, right? We're active and we're resting, right? Keter is just a constant flow, right? So there's no bad can come in there because there's no space. Ve'en sham din v'lo shum koshi klal. For us, even if we're able to get into a flow of giving, So a lot of times we start to make cheshbonot. Is this person really deserving? I don't know. You don't answer this question, but I'm gonna ask a question. When a person asks for tzedakah, there's a thought come in your mind: is this person really deserving, or is it right? Maybe they're doing something right. So wherever we got that from is not important. Those ideas, right? Keter, that doesn't even come up. It's not about you and whether or not you're worthy or not, whether or not you're befitting or not. It's about I'm flowing and giving. That's what I'm doing in this world, right? So you could say it's kind of selfish, it's about me, right? But I'm here, I'm giving you, right? You're not deserving of it right now, it doesn't make any difference. You're going to get it, right? You're going to get it, right? So therefore, en shum din velo koshi klal, no difficulty can come in there, and no din, no judgment. Kacha, right? So that seems like a wild place to live our mentality in, right? Just constantly going, giving. I mean, imagine if you last time I was in America, the lottery was like at, I don't know, like $700 million, and like something crazy amount, And so whenever I'm there, I always, there's advertisements all over the highway or whatever. So I always talk with my kids. Say if we were to go get a lottery ticket, if we were to win $7 million, let's think together. What would we do with $7 million? Like $7 million. So not $700 million, right? $800 million. So we'd buy apartments in Israel for all of our family, and they're right, great, okay, and give then you could give like 300 million to like different yeshivas and schools, and like, okay, what do you do the next? Right? Imagine if you had that much money, like it just never ended, and you could just be giving. Like you live in like a nice small cute apartment here in Kiryat Moshe with your family, right? You have food, you want to spoil yourself, you get your food delivered. Right? But you don't need anything. You don't need anything fancy. Just your whole life just giving and giving and giving and giving and giving. Imagine, right? So that's keter. That's keter. Without the part about my own apartment, just flowing, right? That should be we should push ourselves towards that stance in life. That's what I'm here to do. A great example is the person who works in the office next door to this room, right? Just constant giving. Constant, just like flowing, You try to give him something. Watch what happens, right? Very, very difficult. They say. I think I told you guys about the Nazir. Yeah. About the Nazir and the match from Rav Kook. No. Oh no. I think I just said the story yesterday. The Nazir, the student of Rav Kook, he wouldn't take anything from the Rav, anything physical. He refused, and one Motzei Shabbos, he didn't have any matches to make Havdalah. And he went around to all the neighbors and nobody had any matches. So he was stuck. So he went to Rav Kook, and Rav Kook gave him a box. He said, "I'll take one, please." Rav Kook was overjoyed that he was able to give something physical to his student, right? But the Nazir, he made this decision for his Rav. So, Keter is all those thoughts and those hergelim, how do you say hergelim? The conditioning that I have of like wanting to get for myself and to bring to myself, I rid myself of that as much as I can. I push myself towards this. We can't do it completely, but I push myself towards this. Like all I want to be doing is be in this place of giving. He says, therefore, and if a person does this, he pushes it towards this, so too a person's thoughts should be empty of anything, any bad or disgusting type of thought. There's no place for it. I'm too busy thinking good things.
I'm thinking about my wife. A couple of weeks ago, she gave money to someone with tzedakah. And I asked her, why you do it? Maybe he don't need it. So what? I give it. I need to give it. When he don't deserve it, it's not my problem. You need to fix it with Hashem.
Right. True. And there was a tzaddik. You just reminded me of a tzaddik, the Devorah Hyman, the Tanzer, who was. I'm not going to get started because once we get started with the Devorah Hyman, we won't be able to stop. He was one of these rabbis, just like off the charts. Every story about him is just blows you away. But his biggest thing was tzedakah, and people would give him tremendous amounts of tzedakah for him to give to people. And they say between his walk from home to shul every morning, it took him like 2 hours. and he didn't live so far away, and because there would be thousands of people that would be there asking for tzedakah, and every day he would make a tish. He was the only Rabbi that I know that would make a tish every day, just so that poor people would have a place to eat, and he would have hundreds of people every day, and he wouldn't sleep at night if there was 1 shekel, 1 ruble, in his house. And there was times where he went to sleep and he thought he had given away everything, and he couldn't fall asleep, and he knew that it was because there was still money in the house, and he turned over the whole house until he found a kopek or whatever it was, right? And then he would go give it. He wouldn't sleep in the house. There's a story of once that he had a leg, he had some type of illness in his leg and all issues, and they would send him to doctors and everything. So once he went with his sons to Vienna. They're supposed to see a doctor in Vienna, and they're on the train, and the sons are saying, "What are we going to do? We need to get the money from Tati, because if he's holding on to the money, we're going to get to Vienna. We're not going to have any money." And so they said, "Tati, we'd like to hold on to the money if it's okay." And they said, "What do you think I'm going to do with the money? What would I do with the money?" I said, "No, just Tati doesn't have to think about it. We'll hold on to it." Okay, so they gave it to him. So he said, "But when we get to Vienna, I want it back." Right? And because on those days in trains, people would, so maybe somebody's going to come, he's going to give all the money away in the train. So they get to Vienna, they give it back. They're walking down the street. 5 minutes didn't pass, and they get to this hotel, and they say, "Tati, we need the money because we're going to go in and get a room." And he said, "There's no money." There was a yid. You should have seen a nebuch. I gave this. He gave him the whole thing. Right. So what are we going to do? We're in Vienna. Right? No cell phones. There's no bit. There's no right. So he said, "What are you worried about? Because Baruch Hu is not in Vienna." Right. So let's go to shul. Let's go learn. So they went to go learn, and sure enough, a yid came over there and he recognized the Rebbe, and he was a wealthy man. He said, "Please, while you're here, Rebbe, you and your son stay by me. I'm going to take care of everything you need." So anyway, there's a million stories just about his tzedakah, the Divrei Chaim. He was an amazing human being. But he said that if 1,000 people come to me asking for tzedakah, he said, I'm going to give to every one of them. And even if 999 of them are liars and cheaters, because maybe there's going to be one that really, right? And that's like your wife said, that's their cheshbon, and this is my cheshbon, right? My job, what am I trying to do with the tzedakah, right? I'm trying to bring God into this world. That's what I'm doing, right? And so that's the midah that I'm trying to bring in. And that's not saying that all of us should learn the halachas of tzedakah, and Divrei Chaim is like big tzaddik, and most of us can't and probably shouldn't do that. Take care of our families and everything. But in any event, the point is that there's no bad thought even has a place to come in, because I'm in a place of just giving. Right? Just like, and this is a little bit deeper, I'm not going to go so into this one sentence, but it's just like Keter really represents the highest level of Torah, which Torah is complete. It encapsulates as all wisdom, right? It's not like Lahavdil, like Harvard or Oxford that has, brilliant minds in all the different categories, but they're all still struggling to try to understand things in the world, and there's more questions than answers. The Torah is complete with everything. There's not a single secret or understanding that the Torah is lacking, right? We don't understand it all, but so too, meaning it's just full. The point that he's trying to make here is that it's full, and there's no space for anything extraneous or anything that's not, right? So too this midah of ket that is dependent on the thoughts. Now he tells us, "Kach lo yifnei shum pniya chutz mimachshevet haTorah." So too, we should try to train ourselves to not allow our thoughts to be open to any type of extraneous thought, just thoughts of Torah. V'lachshov begadlut hakel, and to think about the greatness of God, to be contemplating God and godliness, upulotav hatovot, and all the good things that Hashem does. Just like I just saw 2 days ago in the Shulchan Aruch, and the Hilchot Mezuzah. Mezuzah, what do we do when we walk in between in and out of the door?
Touch the mezuzah.
We touch the mezuzah, right? Right. So the Arizal says we kiss our hand afterwards. The Shulchan Aruch says, he doesn't say actually to touch it. He says la'aniach et yado, sorry, not the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah says in the Shulchan Aruch, you should place your hand on it. Not just give it a little touch and a kiss. You should place your hand on it, and the Taz says over there, and you should contemplate the oneness of God. Right? What a beautiful meditation for every time we walk in between doors, right? Stop. Bring it in. So too, that's the thought of Keter. So I'm thinking about God. I'm thinking about all the good that God does in the world. Right? Ulehitiv kiyotze, and how I can do good. Right? My thoughts, I want my thoughts to be filled. It's kind of the opposite of I would say of like kind of like the secular mentality, in the sense of secular mentality is very much about like, you know, like you do your work, and then it's leisure time. Right?
Yep.
Whatever you think, whatever you feel is right, it's okay, you know. What any idea that any person has, like, you know, you want to make a TV show, you got the money, go ahead and do it. You know, you want to write a book about something that's not necessarily good for the world, it might even bring bad. Gentlemen, I don't have to tell you, you know, if TV, if we could just erase TV from the world just for like a week, the world would get a lot healthier and better, you know. People suffer so much trauma and so many bad thoughts and bad desires come not from within but from without, right? So we don't want our minds to be empty and just like void and just whatever comes in there, right? It's got our minds, like we said last week from the Nefesh of Hyman, is like the Holy of Holies in the temple. So we're very careful what we bring in there, and we want only to be godliness in there, only goodness, only thoughts of how to do good. And if I start having thoughts of what am I getting, what am I gaining, and all those types of, right? So then we want to manually shift those thoughts out of our mouth, out of our mind, and bring in thoughts of giving and thoughts of Torah and goodness. The general rule is that nothing foreign should come in there, right? I told you guys a story of the Katzker Chassid that was he wasn't having trouble controlling his thoughts during davening. You don't remember this story? Oh, this is a good one. Get ready for this. This is a good one. Chaim. There was a chassid that came to the Katzker Rebbe and he said, Rebbe, I step into Shmona Esrei and I just have all kinds of thoughts about a million things. I can't control it. And I've asked and I've looked in the Sefer. I need advice how to do it. And the Rebbe told him, just stop thinking about it. Just stop thinking about it. I did tell you this story?
No.
No,
I don't think so.
Okay. With your smiles, I thought that maybe it was familiar. Oh, this is a great one. You won't be able to forget this one. The Rebbe said, just stop thinking about it. He said, Rebbe, I know. I'm trying. It's not working. Right? Have you guys ever had that? You're in the middle of Shmona Esrei and all of a sudden you're thinking about, like, what did I eat for lunch last Tuesday or something? Or, you know?
It's not like that.
Or whatever, anything. In the Gemara in Yerushalmi and Brachas, there's different Amoraim that's talked about the different things that they would think about in Shemona Esrei, not accidentally. How many bricks were in the wall, right? How many sheep were walking by, right? They talk, all of us have these machshavot. So he said, Rabbi, I need an eitz, I need an advice how to do it. Rabbi said, stop thinking about it. That's it. Stop thinking about it. The Katzker didn't have time to, he said, just stop thinking about it. So the chassid went out to work, felt a little disappointed. He didn't really get what he was looking for. And he comes home and he sees his wife standing outside, and the chassidim are taking all the furniture out of the house and putting it in the garden. Right? And his wife is like, I have no idea what they're doing. And he said, well, did you ask them? And they said, yeah. They said that the Rabbi told them to do it. So he says to them, what do you? It's my house. I'm the balabait here. And they said, the Rabbi told us to do it. Rabbi told us to do it. Rabbi, no Rabbi. He's also my Rabbi. This is my house. I'm the balabait. They said, you go talk to the Rabbi. The Rabbi told us we're doing it. That's good chassidim. So he runs to the Rabbi, and the Rabbi's smiling when he walks in. He says, when it comes to your physical house, you're the balabait. You decide what comes in and what goes out. Right? Only you. Even the Rebbe can't decide that for you. But what about here? You're not the balabait here. Right? So chazak. That's a very, very strong story, right? So, on one hand, we can't help it when we get thoughts. We get all kinds of thoughts. Gentlemen, I don't have to tell you. We get Not a day passes without the craziest thought. The Rebbe says, he says, if you could follow the thoughts honestly of every human being from the morning until night, right, and you would compare them with the thoughts of a person who's, very unhealthy, you would see that they're not that different. The difference is that a healthy person knows what to act on and what not to act on, hopefully, right? But the same thoughts, the same desires, the same, right? They all come up. But you decide if they stay there or not. You can push them out, right? You have to work. Sometimes they're insidious. They're working hard to stay in there, but you can push them out. It's like the Rebbetzin Rachel Levertov, the wife of the Chabad Shliach in Austin, Texas, once told a friend of mine that he was upset. He heard the concept of Shmirat Einam. I have to guard my eyes. It's one thing that I don't going out and get a bunch of girlfriends, but now you're telling me I can't even look. It was a new concept to him. Like, that's unfair. It's difficult. And so Rebbetzin told him, she said, no, you can look. The first look is free. The second one you have to pay for. Right? So the same thing. The thought comes in our mind, right? You can't control what thoughts come in your mind. But once they're there, you have control of it. Right? And I'm saying that in an absolute way to empower us, because we have to know that, because a lot of people feel like they don't have control because they've lived their life in a way of not asserting that control for so long that they don't realize that they do have control of it. And that's what the Kotzker Rebbe wasn't just trying to be cute, right? So that's this midah of keter, but it's not just controlling it, but it's pushing it towards the good.
Is it okay when I'm going back to the mezuzah?
Yeah, sure.
I have this question. I was thinking about it. It's much more a custom when we go inside a room, we touch the mezuzah, we kiss the hand, and we continue with everything we do. But when I listen to you, it's not enough. So my question is, what do I need to do to get more insight of the meaning of touching the mezuzah?
All right, beautiful question. Well, I think the first thing is like that diuk that I said about the Ramah, is don't just touch it and pass. It says lehaniach, to place your hand on it, which means like stay there for a second. You don't have to stay for 10 minutes. There's a lot of tzaddikim, and especially Jewish women, would daven with their hand on the mezuzah. When they wanted to daven for something, they would put their hand on the mezuzah to daven for it. Right, that was part of their tefillah, because I wanted, just like Avram Avinu said to Eliezer, to put your hand on my bris, because there's something about touching a holy object. You touch the mezuzah, and you think about, everybody has their own thoughts about the oneness of God, connection to God, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We all have to learn about what that is and what that means and what are the ramifications of that oneness, right? But just the stopping for a second, keep it right.
It reminds me when I came to Israel a couple of years ago. I come to the Bet Knesset. I couldn't read any word of Hebrew. I didn't understand. And some man said, "Come sit here." And he takes the Siddur, look for the page and give it. And I didn't know how to read. And I hold it upside down. And I was looking, I don't understand. I said, okay, it's okay. I took my hand on the Siddur, closed my eyes, listening to everything I heard. And then the thoughts are coming inside, the feeling are coming inside. And this man who was thinking, this must be a lunatic. The Siddur you don't read, and he take it upside down, but after that you know why. But it's exactly when you put it on, when I put it, I had so strong feelings about that.
Right.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. They say about the Baal Shem Tov, when you go to a rabbi or to a friend, you say, "Give me a bracha." So what does he do with his hands? He puts it on your head, exactly. Right? So the Baal Shem Tov would put his hand on your heart. He would give you a bracha. That's how he would do it. So they're both good. That's great, right? Wow. But there's something about that touch, right? Holding on, hold it, right? Something happens there, right? But even, I think even more important than that, especially in our generation, is just taking the time, Like one year on Rosh Hashanah, one of my things that I took upon myself in Rosh Hashanah was, before I say Asher Yatzar, after coming out of the restroom, to pause for 2 seconds, just 2 seconds, and to prepare myself to make the bracha, right? 2 seconds, gentlemen. We all have 2 seconds, right? Costs less than falafel, right? It's very we all have plenty of it. It's so hard. It's so hard, right? To stop for a second, right? And to think about it, to put myself into it, to prepare myself. When I was younger, and the early years of marriage, which are much more sensitive years in a couple's relationship, when I would come home for the day, I would stop outside of the door, I'd put my head on the wall, and I would try to just focus. I was doing everything that I was doing all day and learning, and my wife was doing, what she was doing, and I would just try to focus myself. What am I trying to do right now? I'm going inside to be a giver to my wife, to be a loving husband, to be supportive. She's probably has a whole pekalach of feelings and things that she's gone through throughout the day, right? I don't know. I'm not saying I was successful at this, but the idea is a good idea. To try to put my stuff aside and to be there, right? Throughout our day. That's ideally, there's a reason why just before Mashiach, that the most difficult thing for our generation is concentration, is to be focused, right? Everything that's going on in the world is distraction. It's distraction, right? There's noise. There's all of our senses are being distracted, right, from being able to be in a state of focus, right? And ultimately, a Jew's ideal is to be uber focused, right? Not in a crazy way, but total focus, right? Tzaddikim, their level of focus is off the charts. It's something that we don't experience, right? And I'm not talking about like a kind of like a what do they call it, like a professor, like a kind of like an Einstein, like
No.
the room is disorganized and his life is disorganized, but he's focused on solving this one problem. I'm talking about focus on all the different categories. My midot, my relationship with God, my relationship with other people, right? Down to the fine details. One of my rabbis says that you blow your nose, what do you do with the tissue? Right? So it's your responsibility to dispose of that tissue. He says, but some people, so I'm in the middle of davening, I'm probably gonna have to blow my nose a couple more times. They put the tissue on the table and they figure at the end of davening, I'm gonna take it off the table. He said, if your table in this world has dirty tissues on it, your spiritual table also has dirty tissues on it, right? And if you're not thinking about the other people around you, right? So we can never be 100%, clean of everybody's sensitivities, because there's all kinds of sensitivities in this world. But we have to try our hardest. Right? Okay, so he finishes off this paragraph by saying, this was the great level of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his friends, meaning his students, his chabura, is that they were totally 100% focused to the degree that you guys know that it says Rabbi Shimon was patur from tefillah, from davening, because his learning was on the level of davening. His focus and connectedness to God was that level. There's a story that Rabbi Yossi, his mind got distracted for a little bit. And you're talking about a person that if Rabbi Yossi would come into the room right now, we would all faint. Right? These are the kind of people these were. But when his focus got distracted for a moment, Rabbi Shimon rebuked him for it. And I'm going to read you what it says in the Zohar here. Here. This is the story. It says, B'toch kach ra'a Rabbi Yossi, they were in the middle of learning, and Rabbi Shimon saw Rabbi Yossi, she'aya meharher b'divrei olam. They were in the middle of learning, and he was thinking about something. Maybe, I don't know, the sink broke in his house. I don't know, whatever he was thinking about. Like we all have thoughts all day long, right? Amalo, this is what Rabbi Shimon said. Yossi, kum, hashlem tzuratcha. He said, Yossi, he said, stand up and complete your form, your image. Meaning there's something missing in your image right now, your spiritual form. Ki ot achat chasera b'cha, because there's a letter that's missing from you right now. And in the next section, we're going to talk more about what this letter means and seeing letters on people. Very, very deep stuff. So he says, "Shemishum shehebe milei de alma karu Yossi." And since he was thinking about worldly things in this moment, and his focus was not complete, he didn't call him Rabbi Yossi, he called him Yossi, meaning he had gone down a major level. Kam Rabbi Yossi b'samach b'divrei Torah. Rabbi Yossi stood up and he gladdened himself with divrei Torah, with words of Torah, meaning he regained his focus. V'kam lefanav, and then Rabbi Shimon stood up before him, meaning like standing up in front of a great rabbi. He stakel bo Rabbi Shimon amar lo. Rabbi Shimon looked at him and he said to him, Rabbi Yossi, ata shalem ata lifnei atik yomin, v'tzoratcha shlema. Now your form is complete before God. Right? So these are deep. This is like, worlds of spiritual existence that we can't even imagine. Okay, so for today, I want to take a moment to read this little introduction from this Sefer called Vayoma Moshe. It's by one of a big Kabbalist who lives in the old city. His name is Rav Mordechai Scheinberger. Very, very, very special person. He's got a commentary on Tomer Devorah, and what we're about to do in the Sefer. Remember, we talked about the head and the machshavot, and now it's about to go. The Ramak is about to go through the different parts of the face, the metzach, the forehead, the ears, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and the countenance of a person's face. Which each one of those, you think like, wow, I got so many parts of my. I didn't realize I could serve God with my nose, right? My ears and the countenance of my face, and I can express godliness through those parts of me, right? But that's what he's going to do. But just before that, I just want to read this little piece to get an idea. He says, "B'shniya esek pnimiyut haketer." He said that shehu hamoach, v'kan osek b'chitzoniyut k'delahalan. He said that we spoke about the moach, the thoughts. That's called the pnimiyut, the inner part of keter. And now we're going to speak about the external part. And our master, the Ramak, he lists them according to their order. Meaning, when you talk about the parts of your face, how do you list them? In what order do you list them?
Eyes.
Nose, mouth, ears.
Okay.
Or eyes, mouth, nose.
Right. Most of us probably don't think about how we list it, right? The different parts of my face, right? So in Kabbalah, there's an order, meaning there's not just an order because this is how I see your face. There's a reason why Hashem made it like that. Did you ever think why a mouth has one opening and ears have two openings and eyes have, right? And a nose have two openings, right? Did you ever think why ears are on the side but the eyes are in the front, right? There are certain creations of Hashem that the eyes are on the side of the head, right? Did you ever think why our ears are down here and not up here? Did you ever think which is higher, our ears or our eyes?
Also, why we have ears. We can also make us without ears and we can still hear.
Right, and the shape of them, why our nose cuts in between our eyes, why our mouth is on the bottom, why we eat with all these different things. There's reasons and there's depth, to all this. We're not really going to go into all that, but it's just to point out that there's an order because they represent something spiritual. When I say there's an order, the order is from above to below, right? And so the first one is our metzach, right? Our forehead, which is a very interesting part of a person's face, right? Which I don't think we think about all too often. But the metzach has a very prominent place in spirituality, and that's the very next thing we're talking about after this introduction. I don't know if we're going to get to it today, but the metzach is this kind of big open field on the top of a person's head, right? Which is very meaningful, and that's the first one. That's the top. Shehu, and each one of these is represented by the 10 sfirot within our face, meaning the 10 sfirot in our face. Like you guys remember, I think we listed it maybe a week or two ago. The body is also organized like in the Esser sfirot, right? Keter is on the top, right? And Chochma, Bina, and Dat, and then Chesed, Gvura, Netzach, Hod, right? And Yesod, and Netzach and Hod, the two legs, right? Yesod is a person's man's reproductive organ, right? But also within the face, there's also Esser sfirot, and now we're going to learn about them. The Metzach, the forehead, Hu Keter Sheberosh. That's called the Keter of the Rosh. Oznaim, ears come before eyes because they're just a little bit higher than the eyes, right? The top part of the ear, right? It also means that the depth of their spiritual function is higher, right? So first, this is the most important part, so to speak, right? And then comes the oznaim, the ears, keneged bina sheberosh, where that's keneged bina, understanding, right? There's a reason why we say Shema Yisrael, hear Israel. We don't say see Israel, right? Umanau tam lifnei einayim, and they're listed before the eyes. Kihem kodmim le'einayim begova berosh, because they're higher than the eyes. V'yesh od tam yisodi lefi ha'idra, and according to the Zohar, there's also much deeper reasons, but that's enough for us now. Einayim, the eyes are chokhmah. The chotem, the nose, is tiferet, and tiferet includes tiferet chesed gvura, tiferet netzach hod, and yesod. Right? There's other names for that. And the panim, the general face, and the countenance, I don't know if that's the best we can say in English, the herat panim, the shining of a person's face, right? Doesn't mean his skin, but the shining of it, I'll say this one thing. That is a general or, a general light of the 10 sefirot. And then piv, his mouth, is keneged malchut. Malchut. A lot of times in Kabbalah, the malchut is called malchut peh, the kingdom of the mouth. And why malchut? Because malchut is the expression of all of the midot together. And what you say, right? What you say is what represents what's going on inside of you, right? Whether you're trying to hide what you're saying and saying something else, but it all comes out through your mouth.
You said that the ears are higher than the eyes, and the ears are binah and the eyes are chokhmah, but chokhmah, isn't the chokhmah higher?
Right. A very, very good question. Very, very astute question. It's beyond the scope of this shiur. There's a lot written about that. There's a sefer called Sefer Sharei Ora, which is one of our early Kabbalistic sefarim that goes into depth about that. And like I said, in the sefarim, B'ezrat Hashem, you guys are going to go on and learn all these sefarim, but goes into fine detail. Your right eye as opposed to your left eye, right ear and your left ear, and why on one hand the actual kli of the ear, which is the hole inside of the ear, is lower than the eyes, right? But it's just the top of the ear that's higher than the eyes, right? Because there's an aspect of the eyes which are higher than the ears, but there's aspects of the ears that are higher than the eyes, right? So all this is just a little bit of a taste test for us to recognize the depth of the wisdom of one, of the creation, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us, and two, that these are, I don't know if in Harvard and Oxford they're wondering about those things or not, but in our Torah Kadosh we have answers for all of this, right? And reasons for it, and not only reasons and answers, but what that means for you and how you're supposed to conduct your life.
But is there a connection with Malchut Peh and with also reciting the Shema, but accepting the yoke of the Malchut? Is there a connection?
Say it again. Because
you said this Malchut is called Peh, right?
Right.
Peh. But we also say, like, every time the Shema verbally, and then they say we accept the yoke of heaven, but also the connection with the Malchut. Is there a connection?
Yeah, there is. The ears have to hear it, right? So we have to say it with our mouth, and our mouth is really the ultimate expression of what we believe. So if we don't say it, so then we believe it inside. There is such a thing called Hegyon Halev, Hegyon Machshava, that a person's inner thoughts that can't be verbalized, but to a certain degree, everything must be verbalized.
And then you build Malchut with the speech?
Right. Meaning Malchut is like bringing something into fruition, right?
Hashem's kingship. Hashem's
right. Like a Malchut, a kingship, majesty is if the king lives in a house somewhere and nobody knows and nobody sees him, so you don't feel the Malchut. The Malchut is you see him come out, and that's why everybody's so crazy about, in England, the monarchs and everything. It's so silly, they're not doing anything, like whatever. But everybody's crazy. But everybody wants to know what the queen ate for breakfast, right? And why? Because it's something so majestic. It's so big. It's something, and when the melech comes out, so then we all feel part of it. We all connect. Malchut connects everything under one thing, right? So, but it has to be verbalized. It has to be expressed.
When is the Malach comes out? When?
Sorry?
When is the Malach comes out? how.
When?
When the malach comes out and how he comes out.
When does it?
Yeah, when the malchut. When does the malchut comes out?
When does the malchut come out?
Yes.
The malchut, whatever a person's speaking.
Even idle stuff.
Yeah, that's why it's so harmful when a person is speaking negative speech, because he's giving expression to not the good side of spirituality, right?
Doing.
Doing.
Yeah.
Right.
What you doing what?
No, it's your things that you do, that you are
In daily life.
for example.
And then when you speak, it's connected with what you do. Oh, because what you say.
You can't make something through your eyes.
Mhm.
You can make something through your mouth.
Right. So that's an interesting notion. We'll see as we go into the eyes that you actually can do things with your eyes, and really all the parts of your. That's exactly what we're talking about here. But in general, a person's power is through their speech, right? But more than their power, the expression of what they want, what they are, what they're doing, right? Like their words affect, right? And so. So yeah, and so and the whole thing of Kriyat Shema, I'm just thinking now that you said Kriyat Shema, and think about it. To do the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema, your ears have to be open and hearing it, your mouth has to be speaking it, and your eyes have to be closed, right? And it's not just that your eyes are closed; your hand has to be over your eye, right? So there's different minhagim of how to do it. You guys know the minhag of the Arizal is like this, right? And that has to do with the Eses Sfirot and Chochma Bina Da, right? Keter, Chochma, Bina, different countings, right? But it's all so deep, and so even if we don't understand the depth of it, if we understand it's in like it makes it so much richer and deeper. But even not understanding it, it's still important that you do it in a certain way, right? Just kind of like the difference between maybe like Reform Judaism thinking and like traditional Judaism. Reform is like the idea is. Well, the idea behind the mitzvah is what's important. Let me understand, so a mezuzah, does it have to be a kosher mezuzah? No. Let me stop. I like that idea. Let me stop in the doorway, and I'm going to think about, God for a minute. That's great, right? So they're right. That's great, but that's not the mezuzah. That's not the mezuzah. That's not the mitzvah. A mezuzah has to be kosher. If there's one letter missing, it doesn't have that power. It doesn't have that innate ability to unlock that in your soul. There's a different thing that happened when you thought about God. That's great, but that has nothing to do with the mezuzah necessarily, because it wasn't a kosher mezuzah, right? If a person lives with a woman and he has a family with a woman, but there wasn't kiddushin, there wasn't chuppah v'kiddushin, right? So there's no shechina in that place, right? To the degree that it can be, right? When two Jews are kind to each other, there's always a level of shechina, but it's not the same thing, right? So all the different details of it, when we learn deeper in the Kabbalistic Sefer and Chassidut, so we really get a deeper and richer understanding of why it has to be like that. And practically, what am I supposed to do with that? What should be my focus? And that's going to change the way I am engaged with the world. But it has to be that way because there's a power in it being that way, right? So we've been going for a long time. I think. Because the next one is the next piece is that's the end of the introduction to the different parts of the face. I'll just give you I would like to keep going, but it's already late. I feel like we've been going for a long time. You guys have energy? We should take it. Maybe we'll call it. Well, next week we'll continue with Metach.
I can't say anything because I just have to go in 5 minutes because of work, but it's not. It shouldn't stop you. That's what I'm saying.
Right. I think we've been going for an hour now, so I think we'll stop. It's so hard. I look forward to learning with you guys all week this Givaldic Sefer. But the next piece we're going to be learning about the Metzach, and maybe I'll just give you just one story, just as a little introduction. We'll go back to it next week. That on a person's forehead, people who have spiritual vision. I'm talking about, there's nobody in our generation really that's like this. I don't believe. There might be, but like in the days of the Ariya Kodesh, and big tzaddikim and Chassidic Rebbes and Baba Sali level tzaddikim, so to speak, they could see on a person's forehead, they could see everything that's going on with them. And there, to the extent, this was such a well-known thing back in the old days, that some Chassidim, when they would go into the Rebbe, they would put their hat down like this, because they didn't want the Rebbe to see, right? And there's a huh?
Does it work? Can they see?
Can they see through it? I don't know if they can see through it, right? But they see that you're trying to cover up. That they see, right? But when I have my hat on, so sometimes I wear it like just about here, just because that's the way it stays on my head. And I have a friend. I think I mentioned him. One of my neighbors, a very, very unique person, a very, very special person, a big Talmud Chacham. And he says, Micha, pick up your hat right now. he says the whole metzach has to be totally open. Has to be totally open, right? So what is it that they see, right? Is it the lines? So Rav Kook actually talks about in certain places about the lines in a person's head, or especially in the lines in a person's hand, how there's a chokhmah to be able to read into a person what's going on with them, right? But the metzach, it's deeper than that. It's something spiritual. It's not the physical part of the metzach. It's represented. It comes through the physical part of the metzach, but it's actually the letters, the 22 letters of the Aleph Beit, shine on a person's forehead, depending on what they've done and what their spiritual status is, right? If they've done a particular mitzvah, for instance. Next week I'm going to bring in a Sefer just to go. Maybe we'll read a little introduction piece about this. You guys will forgive me that we're going so slowly through the Sefer, but I think it's important to understand deeply what we're learning, that the 22 letters shine on a person's forehead in a certain way that tzaddikim know how to read it, and they can see what's going on. So just the story is, before we learn next week more deeply about it, the story is that Rav Chaim Vital, who was the main student of the Arizal, he one time the Arizal told him, he said, listen, you're not honoring your father enough. And he was shocked. Now, Rav Chaim Vital was epic proportions of a tzaddik, and his relationship with his father he was very close, and he was very honored his father. But there was some type of little thing that the Arizal saw, and so he asked him, Rebbe, how did you see that? He said, because of the gimel. What do you mean? This is when the Rav Chaim Vital learned it. He said, on your forehead, there's the 22 letters of the Aleph base, and the gimel is backwards. The gimel's facing backwards. And he said, what does that mean? He said, gimel we know from the Gemara is gomel. Gomel, gimel dal is gomel dalim, to give, to bestow upon those that need it, right? Dalim is someone who's poor, right? Right. So gemilu chasadim, but gomel dalim is a term that Chazal use to give to someone poor. Gomel is to bestow, to dal someone's poor. And the gimel is turned back on what? Which letters? Aleph Beit. Av. Abba. The gimel is telling me that that there's something lacking in the way that you're honoring your father. You need to do it. You need to do it more, right? And he did it, and the gimel turned around. Right? So these are levels of don't expect anybody in our generation to tell you what's going on your forehead. But it's important for us to know that is a reality, whether or not we are able to sense it or not and see it or not, and it should give us chizuk that a Jew can reach the level where that he can see those things, right? But for us, it'll be enough that we know they exist, and it'll give us more deeper understanding. And hopefully, at the end of that, which is the most important thing of all this learning, is how to practically include that in my actions throughout the day. How to behave towards people. How am I supposed to use, what we're going to get to is, how do I use, did you ever think about how am I using my forehead? Nobody thinks about that, right? How am I going to use my forehead to bring in God to the world? That's what we're going for. And also my nose, and also my ears, and every part of me, right? But just it's a big chiddush, the concept of a metzach, right? Okay, gentlemen, that's enough. God bless you. Have a beautiful rest of the